and then go. Okay.
Yeah, just tell me whenever you see it.
3.
Tonight is Wednesday, October 6th, 2021, and this is the Fantasy Finish Line podcast. Tonight we're going to preview Week 5 of the NFL. Let's go, fantasy football.
Let's go.
Let's go.
LFG. And by the way, for those people in the chat room here on YouTube, the scotch is definitely royalty free, but we're not drinking it tonight. We just have a Four Roses small batch bourbon, and we've had a couple of these guys before the show.
We finished the bottle of scotch before the show.
We did.
We didn't drink a bottle of scotch, but we finished off the bottle that we were drinking in previous shows.
In celebration of Jason's birthday, which is next week, we've definitely had some drinks tonight. So just wanted to let you guys know that. And if you're interested in joining us for a drink because you are watching concurrently, then we would love you to do so.
What are you drinking, Dave?
Well, currently I have the Two Brothers Abel's Weiss, which is the same thing I was drinking last week.
Okay.
And then we also have a number of cool things from local breweries over there, if you want to describe those.
If you saw me finish off a drink during the intro. By the way, I am Jason, and that is Dave, and this is the Fantasy Finish Line podcast. We didn't do the after intro that we normally do.
Well, if you're listening, you've read the title. So
you probably know who we are at this point. And if not, you're going to learn. So I finished off the So Hopped Malted Milk Ball Imperial Stout, a fantastic 10% Imperial Stout that went well with really anything that you want to drink. So that was really good. I'm happy that we got to have some of that. And later on, what do we have? This is another So Hopped beer, Needles Hazy Eye, a New England style IPA. And a clever pun, if I may. And then we have this, Ripley, the barrel-aged Imperial Stout bourbon whiskey.
Believe it or not.
It's not a bourbon whiskey. It's barrel-aged in bourbon whiskey barrels, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I bet this is going to be black as night.
Not a whiskey. It's a beer. Yeah.
Oh, that's... If that was a whiskey, that would be terrifying. But that looks amazing as a beer. So, I don't know if anybody else in the room needs any of this, but it's ready to go. There you go, Dave. Anyways, make sure that you guys check us out on YouTube every week. You can subscribe to our channel. We are trying to build that up so that we can get to our goal for the season. And then we would also like you to subscribe on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter. Check us out on Facebook if it's not down. I believe Instagram is up again. So, way to go. And then, we're drinkfive anywhere you go on the social medias. It's easy to find us. You don't need to know all the specific information. That's what Google's for.
Right?
I think you were going to say something.
He's checking in with the masses here. He knows that Facebook had an outage.
Yeah, I know.
He's experiencing that along with everyone
Reddit
else.
told me.
Yeah. Thank goodness you jump ship from one social media empire to another.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, we have a ton of good content today, but I think the meat and potatoes of the show, after we talk about injuries, etc., is going to be a live Q&A with Jason and myself. And if anybody wants to ask Jason anything, he's open for it because it's his birthday show.
Okay.
So fantasy football oriented, please.
If you need life advice, we can help you screw up your life.
But we can help you with that as well. Yeah.
Dave, you're a little dark here. You might want to adjust that.
What does that mean?
While I start out the trends that we've got going on,
okay.
The injuries, the
I got
notes. So Jimmy Garoppolo was initially thought to have a multi-week calf injury. He exited Sunday's game. He was really poor in that game. He did not play well. He has not played well really all season. He has not topped 20 fantasy points. And the NBC Sports Edge, formerly Roto World, where we like to point out that there's a great player news feed where you can keep updated on the not up to the minute news, but up to the last few hours news, I'd say.
Now it's called NBC Sports Edge, which is not great because certainly it's been taken over by horrible corporations more than it already was previously owned. However, they appear to have.
I think NBC just renamed their product, but yeah,
they appear to have. Well, Roto-World used to be its own thing, and then it was purchased.
Yeah, but it's been owned by NBC for years.
But they're slowly filtering their juice into that Kool-Aid.
Anyways, this page is wonderful. It updates all of the player news. And it provides some commentary to all of them, sometimes amusing commentary. But they actually speculated that it could have been Garoppolo's last snap as soon as he played it in last week's game. Last snap for the 49ers anyways. So in relief, Trey Lance threw a pair of touchdowns, 157 yards, rushed for another 41 yards. Looking pretty good there as a replacement. So the news on Tuesday was that the injury to Garoppolo is not as bad as they thought, and he might actually play Week 5. I don't understand why they would rush him back, especially since they're on bye in Week 6. If Garoppolo is that important, I think that you hold off on that. Even though it is a big game against the Cardinals, you have a chance to give him essentially 3 weeks of rest.
I think by now we understand that it's coach speak to the players. Like, you're not going to say, we hope that Garoppolo can't play because Trey Lance is our future. You're going to say, we hope he can get back as soon as he possibly can and regain our starting position as the quarterback until 2 weeks from now.
We hope that he's so good that he provides us no choice but to go with him.
Until 2 weeks from now when we say that Trey Lance is our starter going forward.
So going through the coach speak, Trey Lance is the best chance for the team. They, in the game specifically coming up on Sunday against the Cardinals, Trey Lance playing would be the best chance of a shootout in that game because the Cardinals are scoring tons of points lately. And he should be the starter this week. I don't, at the moment, see it changing. But as we always say, keep an eye on the injury reports, especially on Thursday and Friday. If guys practice on Thursday and Friday, they're likely to play. If they don't practice, they're unlikely to play.
Sure.
There's always exceptions to that, but they're few and far between.
We have to do a shot talking about this next guy.
I was just going to...
Cheers out there to all of our listeners.
And to Josh Gordon.
There's certainly maybe people listening at like 4 a.m., 6 a.m. So I'm not saying everyone has to do a shot. I'm just saying we are.
I mean, if you're listening at 4 a.m., it's not as dangerous as listening at 10 a.m.
It depends on your
to
perspective.
Do the shot. Right.
Like, we know people that actually get up at 4 a.m. That's not my prerogative, but...
No, we don't even get up at 4 a.m. and we try to get up at 4 a.m. to go skiing. We still don't get up at 4 a.m. Anyways, Josh Gordon is back, everybody. He's back. He was probably picked up already in your league by the one guy who's still living in 2013. So, get that guy. I don't even know the music that was popular in 2013. I should have looked this up ahead of time. I'm just an old man now. Whatever. Anyways, Tuesday he was promoted to the 53-man roster on the Chiefs. He's on the Chiefs now. And he is worth a stash spot on your bench since he's on the second highest scoring offense in the league. So if he has not been picked up, he should be at least stashed. I don't recommend starting him yet, but he has definitely, in these weird stops that he's gone to in Seattle, in New England, flashed that he still has a lot of talent. He just needs to put it all together and I think have some consistency for a little while. So can't land in a better place than Kansas City. There isn't a lot of competition for that second wide receiver position, so he certainly can take that if he is able to stay on the field.
Watkins was, in some weeks, a good fantasy starter. There's no reason why Josh Gordon can't be. He is, by all accounts, in some of the best shape of his life. He's able to sell used cars while having a 12-pack, which is amazing.
You know what I've learned is that guys are either in the best shape of their life or nobody says anything.
That's right.
So it's like Le'Veon Bell. Nobody said anything about Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell was probably eating potato chips when he got signed.
Not in the best shape of his life.
And he had to take a few weeks to get back into a good shape. Here I am talking about shapes, and it doesn't matter that much because they're NFL football players and we sit on a couch on Sunday.
But that's true. But yeah, a pear shape is not a good shape for a football player.
No, it's not. I don't know. Maybe an offensive lineman.
That's true. It depends on the position. But I think Josh Gordon does have the ability
My hero, of course, is the guy from the Patriots who was on Hard Knocks with the Texans. Mm-hmm. I can't think of his name now.
Gordon has the ability to be a high upside player, but he will more than likely be a player that simply solidifies a role as a WR2 or 3 on the team, getting 3 to 4 targets, and being a solid possession receiver. It's not likely that they break up their whole game plan to try and make Josh Gordon something that he's not. So
Andy Reid would never do that.
So we suggest that it wouldn't be a good idea to break up your team unless you have that rotating position. Sometimes I have teams with a positional player that I specifically try to just rotate out for the flavor of the week, hoping that one of them may stick to the wall.
That's good, because sacrificing that flexibility for a really good player is totally worth it.
Yeah,
if it finally hits.
Let's move on to Mr. Montgomery.
I just wanted to praise Google for a moment. So I Googled huge Patriots defensive lineman that played on Houston. You know what my response was?
What's your response?
Vince Wilfork.
That's perfect.
Yes.
Nice job, Google.
Anyways, David Montgomery, he's going to be out 4 to 5 weeks, which should land him on the IR. Hopefully that'll provide you a little roster relief for the leagues that are taking advantage of that. The IR, of course, this year is 3 weeks at minimum instead of 8 weeks in the past. So I think a lot of fantasy leagues are starting to add IR slots, even in redraft leagues. I know it's been a common thing that we've used throughout dynasty leagues to hold on to players that get injured for the whole season and stuff like that. But now it seems like, at least in my experience, that some of the redraft leagues are using that as well. So make sure that you're aware of all of the rules in the league that you're playing in. So Montgomery had a huge share of the Bears' rushing attempts. He also had his best game last Sunday. He had over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is definitely going to hurt, and I don't expect Damian Williams to necessarily be a direct replacement for him. However, if he is a direct replacement for him, he will be very valuable. So, from Field Yates, he's the next man up for the Bears, and he's had 6 career games with at least 12 carries. And in those games, he's averaging 21.3 fantasy points, 6.1 yards per carry, 4 rushing touchdowns. That's not an average, that's a total.
Yeah.
But that's a great pull by you, Dave. Thank you for pointing that out.
Do you remember in the I remember being at Buffalo Wild Wings specifically for a game where Damian Williams was on my team at the end of the year during the playoffs and scored 2 touchdowns during a game to make me win it. And Williams, going in there after there were injuries to a lot of Chiefs running backs, did a really good job. Now, I'm not saying that the Bears are the Chiefs. Far from it. However, the Chiefs themselves are not necessarily known for, outside of Jamal Charles, having the best running back talent and utilizing it in a way that is an every down back, especially not in the past 2 years with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell and Damien Williams and all those guys. So I think that what we need to take away from this is the fact that the stats are the stats, and that Damien Williams has the opportunity and the ability to be a really good running back if given the opportunity.
This was a great game for him. He had 10 carries. I assume this is
the game. Yeah, eating some chicken wings.
Week 14 in 2018. He had 10 carries for 49 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 receptions for 74 yards. I was not there with you. However, that is a hell of a performance.
Yeah, I mean, I was probably eating some mango habanero wings, but they weren't even spicy because I won the league because of his performance. And fantastic job, Mr. Williams.
And that's very spicy on its own.
So to your point, talking about how you don't expect there's a direct replacement, I don't see why Khalil Herbert would factor in when they have a guy like Damian Williams. What I would be more surprised about is that Damian Williams is very, very good in an offense that is still trying to find itself.
So Damian Williams has found himself as the starter in many cases, and he has 2 games where he has more than 13 carries in his career. So that's why I feel like they're not going to run him a lot, and you'll see maybe more of a 60-40 split.
Yeah, but they don't care if they use him up because they
Well, I'm not saying that they're like holding him for anything. I'm just saying he's never, literally twice in his career has he gone over 13 carries.
You're right. We can only go by points per touch, and that is a really good statistic for Mr. Williams. So I think he's a great guy to have on your roster if you're able to grab him. But we're talking about stuff that happens on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning for most leagues. And for most of you out there in 10, 12, 14 team leagues in redraft, Damian Williams was already either owned or he certainly is by now. So you're not going to be able to pick him up unless you're in a league with a bunch of babies. Right?
I'm just thinking of like the crack baby league from South Park.
Unless you're in a league with a bunch of crack babies.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're right. Like, it's unpredictable what will happen. We don't know how Justin Fields will operate. We don't know if Matt Nagy and he's probably going to take back control of the play calling. I've already heard news about that. It's like the one game in which he decides to let it go and relinquish the play calling is the one game that they do well in.
They get like a B-.
They did play Detroit. Yeah.
I know. They played Detroit. They scored 24 points.
Well, let's not talk too long about the Bears, but Damien Williams has the opportunity to be very good.
Yeah, he has a high ceiling, and that's what you want from these waiver guys that you're picking.
But he's on a chaotic in a chaotic situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So next on our list,
Teddy
Two Gloves. He left the game at halftime on Sunday.
Is that your nickname for him, or
no? That's a common nickname for him.
Teddy Two Gloves.
He wears 2 gloves
as opposed to 1 glove like Michael Jackson.
As opposed to 1 glove like most quarterbacks, or none, I suppose. But no, he wears 2.
Teddy Two Gloves.
Every
Got
game.
it. Got it.
Which probably helps him when it gets cold because he's not doing anything different when these guys want to put on 2 gloves.
Okay.
Anyways, he was averaging 17.6 points per game going into week 4. It put him right at the end of the Superflex startability. I think he was the 20th or 21st guy.
So not very good is what you're saying.
But I'm saying on Superflex, and we've been talking about Superflex leagues more. I think that they're more common now.
But below the Andy Dalton line.
Well, I love the name. Let's never change it. We know what we're talking about. Everybody knows what we mean by the Andy Dalton line.
It means an average quarterback at average points. So he was coming in under average, correct?
I'd say it's a Teddy Bridgewater line at this moment.
Well, you said he was number 21. 21 out of what? 32? That's not average.
Well, okay. Like 35 quarterbacks have played this year.
It's still not average. But you're saying he's average to below average, which is startable as a low-end QB2 and Superflex.
Correct. But Drew Lock is going to be starting right now. I feel like that's a downgrade for everybody on Denver.
That's such a downgrade, in fact, that my Steelers, who have not been doing very well, are probably going to win.
Hopefully for the Steelers case, that's true.
Drew Lock and the Broncos, that doesn't inspire a lot of things.
No. So Teddy Bridgewater did not practice. Neither did Melvin Gordon on Wednesday. So we'll see what happens with Denver. There was some value there, and Javonte Williams, right? Yeah, has looked pretty good. He had some really good runs where he just was not being taken down. So perhaps he can sort of step up as the running back there. But aside from that, I don't like any of the fantasy value on that team whatsoever. Joe Mixon has an ankle injury. Initially, it was thought he'd be week to week. Now it appears that it's day to day. Keep an eye on his practice status throughout the week. He did not practice today. Last year, if you remember, he was week to week starting in week 5 with a high ankle sprain. Did not play again for the rest of the season. Really sucked that I traded for him in week 5, thinking, he'll only be out for maybe a game. So take all of this with a grain of salt. You don't know what to expect with Mixon's injury status right now. He was playing over 75% of his team's snaps, and now Samaje Perine will have to fill that role. So anybody who you can pick up off the wire who's going to have a high share of, who's going to be on the field a lot and have a high share probably of touching the ball, is somebody that's going to have potential to put up decent points.
So for those of you who have watched the games, for example, the Bengals versus the Jaguars, which is a fun game to watch, Perine does not have anywhere near the explosive ability of Mixon. He was unable to break through the kinds of tackles that he's able to. He's just not the same kind of player. I generally, Jason and I will suggest that instead of trying to grab the player that is a backup to someone, you just get someone else. And that's how we feel about this situation too. I do feel, though, that his day-to-day situation this year
actually applies to another situation that we're going to talk about later.
Is different from this year because when we say day-to-day, and last year I feel like the coach was just trying to cover up forever what was going on, but they were a horrible team that was losing all of their games.
I know. As soon as Joe Burrow went out, they could have been like, Mixon's done for the year too.
Right. And that's not what they're doing this year.
That.
I hope that that's not the situation. but we'll see what occurs, just like he said. So stay tuned. Not the 1987 comedy horror movie featuring John Ritter, but no, I'm just saying pay attention to Sports Edge, which used to be Roto World. Pay attention to our podcast and drinkfive.com. 4 articles about Joe Mixon. I have a feeling that he is not going to play this week, but will come back the following week based on all the reports that I've heard from beat reporters.
Oh, that's a good feeling to have, I suppose. He's doing well on one of my teams. I'd like to see him back.
Yeah.
So, they also have a Chris Evans there, so you never know. Captain America could kick some ass. Will Fuller has a broken finger.
You see Chris Evans in the NFL. That's not going to work out well.
No. Well, maybe post Super Soldier Serum, he'd do pretty well.
Can he bring a shield on the field?
Well, then nobody's tackling a vibranium.
Oh, my God.
Anyways.
It's not a real metal,
We
Jason.
digress.
It's not a real alloy.
It's not an alloy. It's just it's a pure element.
Oh, okay. Sorry. This is... Clearly, there's some nerdiness going on here, but fantasy football and nerdiness have a lot in common.
It's nerdy stuff for jocks and nerds.
Yep.
Who just like sports. So Will Fuller has a broken finger. He's considered week to week. He was put on the IR today, so he'll be gone at least 3 weeks. This is a very frustrating start for his first season in Miami. For now, I recommend that we cut him loose. Look for your fantasy points elsewhere other than in the Dolphins passing game. So from the Dolphins reporter Barry Jackson, Fuller is going on IR, will be out 3 weeks. Does this provide opportunity for Jalen Waddle to secure a position as the number 2 wide receiver? He's currently averaging 7.5 targets per game, 9.1 points per game. He's the WR 44 in fantasy through 4 games. Do you like Jalen Waddle to kind of step up and have an every down role, or are you worried that with the presence of Jacoby Brissett, there's really not much cooking there?
I think Tua comes back shortly. I think regardless of the QB there, it's not like they have like a very set offense on the Miami.
It's true. I think Gesicki's playing well right now, so that's encouraging. And then you've got Devontae Parker, who is going to see a lot of work because there isn't a lot else going on.
Yeah, bienvenido a Miami, Will Fuller. You don't have Deshaun Watson. There's nobody throwing those bombs to you, so it's difficult with Brissett and Tua to get the kind of fantasy production that you want anyway as a team manager. But he's gone for at least 3 weeks, and so I think Waddle is the guy that will definitely pick up a lot of WR2 targets there. Whether that becomes consistently something that is startable is a question, but I think at the very least that he is rosterable and should be rostered in 10 and 12 team leagues.
So Logan Thomas is week to week with a hamstring injury. He was a popular draft pick this year, and he actually showed up and played well, unlike some of the tight ends that we've drafted this year. So his loss is pretty tough, especially that he got 0 points for you in week 4.
Update on Logan Thomas. This
tell.
afternoon, he was put on IR. He's going to actually miss 4 weeks, is what they've said. About 4 weeks. Could be more, could be less, but 3 weeks definitely because you're put on IR, right?
Yeah.
With the strained hamstring. So it's bad enough. It must be at least a grade 2 strain of the hamstring that they've decided to put him on IR. So not good at all for Logan Thomas rosterers. He's drafted as a mid-range tight end.
Would you hold on to him?
I would, because I still think he's a top 6 tight end, and it's difficult to find them.
Yeah. So I do believe that you're better off streaming a tight end from another team rather than trying to replace him with Ricky Seals-Jones, who is his direct replacement in Washington.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier.
I would recommend C.J. Uzoma from Cincinnati, who had a huge game last Thursday.
Was that 2 touchdowns?
2 touchdowns.
What a game! Yeah, he was great. So that's another guy that you talked about earlier. That again, reinforcing that same point, you shouldn't be rostering the backup, drafting the backup, wavering the backup. You should be trying to find someone who's a better value over a replacement.
Right. Just throwing in a backup isn't always the right thing to do. There's actually very few situations where that's the case. I feel like a Chuba Hubbard to CMC, that works.
Maybe.
And maybe Alexander Madison for Dalvin Cook.
Maybe A.J. Dillon for Aaron Jones.
Yeah, like those.
Maybe like 5 guys out there.
Yeah, for the most part, just look elsewhere. Don't worry so much about the direct backup.
Yeah.
DJ Chark is going to go to the IR. I think he'll be done for the season probably. He broke his ankle on Thursday night. He was off to a good start, though, this season. He played 80% of snaps through the first 3 games. He scored 2 touchdowns. He was averaging 22 yards per catch. That was huge. That's really important for, to have a guy playing well for a rookie quarterback. But his absence is probably going to bump up the production numbers for Marvin Jones and for Laviska Shenault as the Jaguars try to get their passing offense going and try to get behind this most absurd and cooked up quasi-scandal that I've seen in a while. So we'll talk about Laviska Shenault a little bit more later in the episode, in the podcast. But for now, DJ Chark, don't even keep him on your roster. I wouldn't even throw him in your IR slot unless you're in a dynasty team.
Yeah, makes sense to me. So why don't we take a little break?
Let's have a drink, shall we?
And then we're going to move on to the live Q&A segment, and we encourage you guys to ask all the questions that you might have. Cheers to our friends that have joined us in the chat room, and for those of you who haven't, please subscribe to us on YouTube. Just search for drinkfive, all one word, you'll find us there.
Should have bought 2 of these to cellar one of them for additional flavor evolution.
I do like the evolution of flavor.
It's a wonderful thing.
So, for our middle segment today, we're going to actually do a live Q&A session with Jason and myself. It is Jason's birthday this next week. So, happy birthday, Jason.
Coming up Sunday.
Jason, it's your birthday.
I get to watch the White Sox in the playoffs on my birthday. It'll be a good time.
Well, that's great. He is local to Chicago, and I myself I'm also a White Sox fan, so I'm enjoying that.
I should have brought my Sox shirt for the show.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We hope that it doesn't end in tears, but that's what everyone always hopes.
Look, there's going to be 12 teams in the playoffs, 11 of them end in tears. It's just the way it goes.
Well, I'll tell you what's true about the Sox.
Or 10 teams in the playoffs.
That's not true about all the other teams in the MLB right now, is that the Sox have a lot of good years ahead of them. So
They do. They do.
So cheers to them doing a great job with the minor league ball and the draft picks that they picked up.
Yes, it's really fun watching a young team develop. NFL teams don't really get a chance to develop in that way. There's no feeder teams. There's no minor league system in the NFL. So when an NFL team is rebuilding, they take their draft picks, and they are usually able to turn it around really quickly. But then it's more like it burns out quick too.
Yeah, so, it's a bright flame. For the
it
NFL
burns
teams.
brighter, but for less time.
I mean, it's 16 teams, right? But also we don't see anywhere near the amount of injuries and like collision and warfare that happens in an NFL game.
That's true.
We are watching.
Well, it depends on if people keep hitting Jose Abreu with pitches or not.
This is as close as you get to gladiatorial combat, except for maybe rugby. But rugby's just not popular in the U.S.
Well, I would say like UFC is closer.
I don't want to get into
or something like that.
I don't think that should even be a thing, personally.
If you do that on the street, you get arrested. If you play football on the street, nobody cares.
Well, I just say UFC. This is great. How about you also like have to put a thing inside of a thing, and then I'm good.
Like demonstrate that your brain is still working.
Let's talk about the discussion.
What other sports can we trash?
The discussion topics that we have. Now, these come from Twitter, from Facebook, from all over the place. And I drew them all together, all these questions that came out there today, to ask Jason these questions. Now, Jason, are you aware that all of these are questions for you?
Just for me? You're not going to answer them at all?
I can give my advice if
I think that you should, give your 2 cents at least.
I'll weigh in. All right. I've got at least 3 cents.
Well, let me pull up Dave's Week 5 rankings. I recommend that you all go to drinkfive.com in order to look at Dave's rankings. He is one of the experts on Fantasy Pros. He is compiled in the expert consensus ranking that so many people like to use to help set their lineup. In fact, last week, Dave was number 10 out of all of the experts.
See, I don't even like bringing that up because I want to be like number 1 or number 2. But
Absolutely.
Yes, number 10.
Number 10's really good.
Number 10 out of like 200 or so fantasy experts.
That's very good.
I'm happy.
You're in the top
it.
5% of everybody giving fantasy advice. Then this is the place to go to figure out what you want to do to start your, every week.
I am happy about it. So number 10 for last week, right? I'm like number 40.
We must be one of the best like small operations out there.
Absolutely.
Like we don't get paid to do this, everybody. In case you had any sort of
we don't get paid very much.
You're right.
We're still making money. It's just not very much. However, I must say that we're not trying to fuck around here. We're trying to give you exactly what you need. Is the rankings need to be more predictive than just ranking how people
reactive.
did.
So anything that we discuss will be half-point PPR unless otherwise specified.
100%.
So go for it. Let's fire when ready.
Okay, so number 1, Dawson Knox. We talked about Knox last week on the podcast as a player trending up with consistent targets and receptions. If anybody listened to the podcast last week, red zone looks, all those things are trending up for Dawson. He's scored a touchdown now in all of his games. He got 2 last week. Josh Allen's remarks, he said, "I have supreme trust in this guy," referring to Dawson Knox. Is Dawson now a tight end 1 going forward? With the Bills' offense being what it is, with the consistency being what it is he a TE1 going forward, or could his fantasy production crumble? Now, tell me, if you think that he's going to trend downwards from this, why would that be? And if not, then why is he only owned in 62% of flea flicker leagues?
Okay, let me try and answer all of those. Why is he only owned in 62% of leagues? Because last year he was hyped and did not come through. So I think that's why people are kind of looking at him and saying, "Nah, I went for that last year and it didn't work out." A reason why he won't continue to be this player is that he hasn't topped 50 receiving yards yet this year. He's very touchdown dependent for his points. Now, does that mean he won't be a tight end 1? No, I think he will be a tight end 1 because there's so much scarcity at the position. It's only about 6 or 7 deep, including him, so it's not that hard to break into the top 10 and be incredibly relevant and necessary to be owned and to be started every week. The weeks where he scored touchdowns, he was in 83%, 78%, and 81% of the offensive snaps for his team, so he's definitely on the field enough, but he's not getting like a ton of targets. He's ramping up in targets. He's trending up, as we like to say, 3, 5, and 8 targets. But again, he's not topped 50 receiving yards on the season. So I don't think that he's going to be breaking out like a Darren Waller or a Travis Kelce, who are guys who can easily top 100 yards in a game if they're used to the tune of 8 targets.
So you're saying he doesn't have the upside of like TE 1 through 3 where they could score 20 points.
Right.
But
he's definitely like...
he has a higher floor than most people.
He's going to be like a tier 3 to 2.5 tight end.
He's currently the TE 6.5 PPR.
Yeah.
And he's scored, he's averaging more than 1 touchdown per game.
No, he's got 4 touchdowns in 4 games.
No, he has 5 touchdowns in 4 games.
Oh, okay. He has 4, but let's move on.
Oh, I'm wrong about that?
Yes.
Shoot.
I have his Pro Football Reference page up.
I thought that he had scored 3, and against Pittsburgh, he didn't score a touchdown, which I'm fine with as a Pittsburgh fan.
Pittsburgh won that game. They beat one of the best teams in the AFC. They just can't beat anybody else.
Well, let's
move on.
Let's temper our expectations, right? I still think that that Pittsburgh's defense will come out of the box with T.J. Watt, etc. But yeah, so what you're saying is again he's going to be a high tight end 2 or tight end 3 at the lowest, and still within that top 10 tight ends for the rest of the season.
Here's the thing about him, and I think we'll probably bring up this guy later, but there's a better tight end by the numbers who is also owned in 60-some% of leagues. That's Dalton Schultz.
Okay, it came out that Chris Carson is dealing with a neck injury. I'm not sure what vertebrae or if it was just something that was in the upper neck. But he ceded snaps to Alex Collins last week. A lot of people were picking up Alex Collins on the waiver wire this week. Collins went 10 carries for 44 yards, 1 touchdown. We've seen this before, though, with Rashad Penny, with a lot of people in Seattle.
Yeah.
And it always goes right back to Carson. The coach is always, let's go back to Carson. Every single player on the team, let's go back to Carson.
Yeah.
And I don't see a lot of reason that would be different right now than it was before. For this week, Seattle goes up against a very stout Rams defense. Should we fade Carson? Is it just this week? Should we look to unload Carson and trade him or get him off our teams? Or is this just a temporary setback for Chris?
I would be fine with, sitting him for a week, but he is definitely a guy who is going to see the majority of carries on his team if he is healthy. So I like Chris Carson a lot. I got him on a dynasty team, for fuck's sake. So
yeah.
This week, especially against the Rams, I got no problem with fading him, with sitting him down this week. Don't be surprised if he puts up 70 yards and a touchdown, though. So he's questionable. The game is tomorrow night. He did not practice on Tuesday. So you may have the decision made for you, and he probably won't play because it's a short week.
Well, we got a question in the chat room. It is from Breck. He says, Robert Woods, Jalen Waddle, or Marquis Brown?
Marquis Brown.
And
without even looking, I know that the answer is Marquis Brown.
And Jason says Brown in PPR.
That's fine with me. Jalen Waddle, good in PPR. Like you said, he's getting over 7 catches per game. But Marquis Brown has been playing very well. The passing offense on the Rams is improving. I think that you have to stick with Marquis Brown. He had those drops on, Monday night or Sunday night? And he totally kind of redeemed himself last week.
We have talked a lot about Woods offline, Jason and I have, and also a little bit on the podcast. And it's very strange what's going on with Woods as far as being a part of the Rams offense, where he was somebody that was drafted pretty highly in drafts this preseason, but is simply not living up to expectations based on the play calling and everything else. And so I would agree with you. I think that Marquis Brown is clearly the play. He's going up against Indianapolis on Monday. Yeah. And I happen to have Marquis Brown at 26? 6?
Oh, this is half PPR.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter.
They're all very close anyways.
But yeah, so him and then...
He's 27 in full PPR.
Him and then Woods.
Woods at 31 and Jalen Waddle at 37. But like I said, Marquis Brown all the way in that situation.
Yeah. Troy asks, is Patterson at his peak value for a trade, or is this continued performance worth holding on to? And I think he's talking about Cordral Patterson on Atlanta.
Yes.
And the question is, clearly, is he going to continue at this pace? We all thought that Mike Davis might be the guy in Atlanta, and it's turned out that Cordell Patterson is the person who has turned that opportunity into the most fantasy points. So Jason, if you could field that question.
Sure, I'll do that. There's another request from the chat room. There's
a request from the shot room
for shots.
Yeah. Do you want one?
Give me like a really small one.
Happy birthday.
I can't deny my guy Glenn. But you take that, and Cordell Patterson. It's hard to think that he'll be that much better than he is right now. He's the RB2 for fuck's sake. I mean, he has played his best season better than anybody could have ever hoped that he would play this year. So by that alone, I would say that this is his peak, and you have to sell him. It's the Atlanta offense. If it was on a better offense, I would be more likely to endorse holding on to him.
That's right.
And keeping him for the year. But Mike Davis is still getting a lot of work.
That's right.
Cordell Patterson, I think that you could probably get a lot for him right now. If he has a good game on Sunday morning, then that could be the case again. Reminder, there is a Sunday morning game. It starts at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. The Jets and the Falcons are playing in
London. Yep. And shots for Jason's birthday. And I agree with him, by the way. Sell Cordell Patterson if you have him. Do not buy Cordell Patterson if you're smart.
I agree.
Cheers.
Cheers, Glenn. Thank you, buddy.
Ha ha. We have another question.
We'll see you in November.
Another question from the chat room. He's gone till November, as often said in the 90s or the early 2000s, I guess. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Wake me up when November comes?
No, not the
like
Green Day reference. Gone till November. I'll be gone till November. It's Wyclef Jean.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, Jason, come on, man. The chat room, give me some back me up here with the Gone till November, please. Appreciate that. So we've got Higbee or Schultz this week. Interesting question. That's Dalton Schultz or Tyler Higbee. I personally, in my rankings for half PPR, have Tyler Higbee at number 9 and Dalton Schultz at number 12. Now this will change probably tomorrow morning to afternoon based on whatever the new information is that comes out. But I happen to like Higbee on the Rams. The reason why I like that is because Stafford has been favoring him. Stafford is moving the ball really well. And you know what happens to Russell Wilson? I'm sorry, not Russell Wilson. You know what happens to the Dallas Cowboys offense as it moves along is that I tend to see, I think, a little bit of the running game being favored or the passing game being favored for the receivers, and a little bit of the tight end position disappearing sometimes for games for the Cowboys. And I've noticed that in past years. Now, that's just a passing reference for me, but I have to say that I think Higbee will have a better game. Now, because those guys are very close, I'm literally talking about 9 and 11, 9 and 12.
Yeah. It's close to a coin flip.
Either one could happen.
For sure.
But I prefer the Rams offense against Seattle as opposed to the Dallas offense against the Giants. And that's just me. What do you think?
I actually am leaning towards Dalton Schultz on this one. So the Seahawks are in the middle of the pack when it comes to giving up points to opposing tight ends, referring to Higbee. But when you look at Dalton Schultz, they're playing the Giants. The Giants are giving up the 4th most points to opposing tight ends. The interesting thing there, they have not given up a 10-point game. So I think that he has a very high floor. And when you're at that 9 to 12 position, as we're talking about with tight end, a high floor is probably the safer way to go because you're not going to get a high ceiling out of any of these guys. So I would go with the higher floor, Dalton Schultz. He's way more likely to have 5 catches for 60 yards than Tyler Higbee is.
Well, if we agreed on everything, then we probably wouldn't be having these discussions.
It'd be a really boring show. Yeah. And then we had one more from the chat room. Start 3 at PPR. Robert Woods, Michael Pittman, Jalen Waddle, Jameson Crowder, Devonta Smith, and Damien Williams. This sounds like a flex. So right away, we're crossing off Woods. I think that we're crossing off... I like Damian Williams there.
Yeah, I like Glenn's. I think we should bet on the tight end. So let's just do a gentleman's bet. We'll bet on a 6-pack for the next podcast.
Schultz versus Higbee.
Yeah, and I've got Higbee.
It's funny because I've got Higbee on multiple teams, so I want him to do well.
Well, put your money where your mouth is, right? A 6-pack, it's up to you. You could buy a 6-pack of Corona, or you could buy a 6-pack of an amazing
6-pack of Bud Light. It is.
I don't really want that.
No,
but I'm sure I can give it to somebody. So I'll bet on a 6-pack. Let's do half PPR. I've got Higbee, you've got Schultz, and 6-pack for next week, whatever you want.
Okay. I'm in.
Right. So about this other question, you've got so many players that could possibly be put in there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You got to pick half of them.
I gotta say, first of all, like you said, I think we should.
I think we can eliminate Woods, and I think also put in Damien Williams, because as a guy who's going to be getting a starting running back role, that's in your flex, that's a really good place to go.
Yeah.
So that's 1 and 1. Then you've got. I feel like we could probably eliminate Pittman from this because he hasn't been doing too much.
We've
got him at 38.
I actually really like Pittman. He's been decent, but in the last 2 games,
you've got him ranked behind Robert Woods.
In the last 2 games, he scored 7 and 6, so he's not on any high trends list right now. And he's playing Baltimore this week, which is not a great matchup. But Michael Pittman's a good player, maybe for the future. I agree. So Woods and Pittman are questionable. Who are the other guys that are available?
So the rest of the question is
Crowder, Smith, and Waddle.
Waddle. I like Devonta Smith here, and in a full PPR, I would probably go with Waddle because of the high amount of receptions he's getting every game. It's a very high floor for that man. Devonta Smith's got a really high ceiling. Who are the Eagles playing? NFL Week 5 schedule. So the Eagles are playing the Panthers. Boy, that's a tough call there. And Crowder is still on the Jets, right? I don't want any part of Crowder, really.
I love Jamison Crowder. He's a fantastic flex play. But based on this particular list, I think personally that the answer is Robert Woods, Devonta Smith, and Damien Williams, and that's my final answer.
Okay.
What do you?
I'm with you with Smith and Williams. I would put Waddle in instead of Woods.
Yeah, I'm not angry at that. But I say those two guys, and then Woods or Waddle, depending on how you feel about their upsides. But I think ultimately the answer is with the crowded wide receiver room and everybody healthy over there, and the Jets, the Crowder is a little unfortunate. And Pittman against Baltimore, having not done so well for the past 2 weeks, we're going to cross him off our list as well. So those three guys.
So we got someone who must be looking at your rankings list and asking us the hard questions.
The hard ones.
They want to know. I ought to shut out the name to thank him for the question. Breck again. Should he start Hurts or Cousins?
Yeah.
And they are right next to each other in your rankings.
8 and 9.
8 and 9.
Yeah.
So Jalen Hurts has done nothing but impress me this year. I was super down on him going into the season, totally fading him. I'm willing to admit that I was completely wrong about that. I think that Detroit could wind up in a situation where they run the ball a lot because they can be up on Detroit. So I like Jalen Hurts in this pick.
I totally get that. My own rankings, and by my own account, which is, you can go to the website and see
it is gospel and correct.
It is Hurts over Cousins. However, I agree with Glenn in the chat room saying that I think that Cousins could be the play, just because I prefer, if everyone is right next to each other, to take the veteran with the guys that I know. And Hurts and his wide receivers, I don't have enough trust in compared to Cousins and Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook.
That's fair.
Like, let me get the guys that I know can give me the higher floor. That's Cousins.
Okay.
All right, so
it seems like we could build a team at this point.
Oh, of course you could.
I'll take Schultz and Hurts. You could take Higbee and Cousins.
Now, Christian McCaffrey is back out there practicing in full pads today, and CMC owners are still holding their collective breaths. That's good news. Leans towards him playing in week 5 or 6. I think they might hold him out this week, but the news is not going to be in until Thursday or Friday. Do you think that if he is playing, you would immediately play him on your team, or would you be afraid at all that they would make him a decoy or something like that?
I absolutely start Christian McCaffrey if he's playing.
Yeah,
he only played 3 games last year, and it was mostly spotty through the injury, and he scored 30 points a game when he was out there. I think that there is no decoy when it comes to Christian McCaffrey. You're getting 100% effort from him, and you're going to it would be silly to decoy him because that would just risk further aggravating the injury, and playing him as a decoy would be admitting that the injury is not yet healed. So I have no qualms with starting McCaffrey if he plays. Thankfully, he plays at noon so that you'll have the chance to make that decision.
Well, it sucks if you play at 3:25.
If he's got a Monday night game, then that really sucks.
I have to say,
next week he plays at noon as well. The week after that he plays at noon. The week after that he plays at noon. So thankfully the Panthers aren't a marquee team. They're playing at noon through week 9.
They're not a marquee team this year. They might be next year based on their current trajectory, the possibility of them. It looks to me like this is early in the season, but they could definitely be in that championship game.
They're very good right now, and Sam Darnold is playing excellent football.
Yeah, he's not saying any ghosts at all. No ghosts. No ghosts.
Maybe the ghosts are helping him. Maybe they're friendly ghosts.
Maybe it's Casper out there.
Yeah.
Matt Nagy reverses course on his quarterback. Could Justin Fields, earlier today, was named the Bears starter moving forward. So this bodes well for Darnell Mooney. Mooney futures, you guys have him out there. He did so well.
I picked him up this week.
He did so well this past week, of course. 5 receptions for 125 yards in the first game that Nagy actually, called the plays correctly because he didn't call the plays. 5 receptions for 125 yards. But can Fields involve other people on the team? Without David Montgomery, without having involved in any of his games so far, really, Cole Kmet or Allen Robinson, the Bears can't win games with just Darnell Mooney and Justin Fields. So are those other guys going to be involved in the offense, or is this going to be a structure fire that you want to avoid for the rest of the year?
They're going to need to involve them in the offense.
100%, yeah.
I
but
mean,
will they?
Last week was the first game that he had double-digit completions. So it's a slow trend upward for our guy Justin Fields. Our guy Justin Skyler Fields.
Our guy Justin Skyler Fields.
I say that about everybody. He only had 3 Look, he hasn't had that rushing element to the game that was sort of promised when he was drafted. So I'm still waiting for that to come out. They play the Rams this week. I don't know what. I don't know. I certainly don't want to go starting Justin Fields anywhere. But I think that it's the right decision to be playing him, and I think that Darnell Mooney is a guy to keep an eye on going forward, and I think that Allen Robinson is someone who has way too much talent to be kept down for the whole season.
I certainly agree with that.
And he certainly has said the right things. We're here in Chicago. I listen to sports radio a lot.
So what has he been saying?
He is not you got to give me the ball. You got to do this and that. He's I want to help the team win.
It's his tryout year. This is a contract year for Allen Robinson.
He's showing that he can be a team guy. He understands his position. Man. He understands that he's a veteran.
Can you imagine?
And that he's going to be the kind of guy that is brought to help shepherd along the younger players.
Yeah.
So if he's looked at as sort of a locker room problem, he's not going to get the kind of contract that he wants.
I've never seen him being a guy that's acting up or anything.
No.
But to do that this year would be sudden death for his career going forward.
That's true. So I think that Allen Robinson is saying the right things. It will come along for Allen Robinson, like many of the other studs who are starting very slowly, like an Alvin Kamara. So be patient with him. I'm okay with sitting him until Justin Fields figures out how to complete maybe 20 passes in a game.
That would be good.
So
cheers to your birthday, sir.
All right. And to our guy Vince Foss's birthday.
And to Vince's birthday, who's sometimes
happy birthday, Vince.
Sometimes a contributor to our site and has been on the show before. Happy birthday, Vince.
Actually today.
All right, should Brandon Ayuk be rostered anywhere? This is a serious question. So we've been down on Deebo Samuel, right? Nobody else on that team has stepped up, and so all the targets and all the resultant fantasy production has come right back to Samuel. Now, I've said Deebo Samuel is fantasy fool's gold. He was for a couple weeks, and then he suddenly came back because nobody else stepped up on that entire team to be anything, getting the targets and sucking up, what's going on there in that offense. So because Deebo Samuel is now, at least in my opinion, a WR1 on that team, because just from pure, just watching the game and seeing what they're doing, they have to give him the ball. He's the only wide receiver that is there every time. Do you think that Ayuk is going to be rosterable at all on any squads, 10, 12, or 14 teams?
I think that if you've got Ayuk, you hold for another week or two. And, well, here's the thing. You've got a week with Trey Lance this week coming up. Then you've got a bye. And then hopefully you have another game with Trey Lance if he played well. So you're going to have to take a chance with him. If you need to drop him to make room, fine. But I think that it's worth holding on to see how things work out with Trey Lance. It's certainly possible that Trey Lance can expand the offense and make them all more productive, and thus there are room for 2 wide receivers there. Last year he was pretty good. Good enough to be starting as a flex player.
Yeah.
So I think that I think that if you can afford it, you hold on to him. If he is in that position that we were talking about earlier on your roster that you use to switch out for other players, then you may have to sacrifice him to the waiver wire.
Sacrifice.
But if you can afford it, you hold on to him.
Joe versus the volcano. I get it. I understand. We have another question from the chat room that is from Fantasy Catch-Up. He says, got offered Aaron Rodgers, Deebo Samuel, and Saquon Barkley for Josh Allen, Calvin Ridley,
and DeAndre Swift. Now, this to me,
on paper, it seems pretty even at first glance. What do you think?
At first glance, what it seems to me is that somebody is trying to trade big names in Rodgers and Barkley for players who are playing very well right now. And, of course, that's what you always want to do when you trade, but you don't want to be on the wrong side of those trades.
Yeah.
So, Fantasy Catch-Up, I would decline this trade. I would try and hold on to one of Allen or Swift because they're playing very well right now. Swift's usage numbers are spectacular, and he's going to be a guy that performs better than you think he should just because he's on the Lions. Calvin Ridley is a focal point of that offense, the passing game. And, you've got Aaron Rodgers who in any game could just hand the ball off 30 times and not throw any touchdowns. Deebo Samuel's playing well, and then Saquon Barkley is still, he's a stud, but he's sort of an on-again, off-again kind of stud. And he's on a team where the passing game is really starting to develop. And not like he's going to be left behind, but he's just not. Look, I mean, these are good players for players that are playing great right now.
I think I agree with Jason that both of those sides are very even if you look at them from a historical perspective to what they should do going forward. However, I think he's exactly right on when he says that it's a little bit of an
names for numbers.
Yeah, so I side just a few points higher with Ridley, Swift, and Allen, which looks like that is the side of Fantasy Catch-Up. And so I say, sir, unless you can get a little bit more from the other player, you should hold off and not make that trade.
And to just talk about trades in general for a minute, when people try to package 3 players for 3 players, I think it's incredibly hard to evaluate the value there. And for the most part, when people are offering that to you, you are not getting the value that you should get. And I think that you should mostly be suspicious of those trades working out for you.
Yeah, well, these trades are open waters, right? The pirates, here there be dragons. This is how it works.
It's uncharted territory.
And generally, there's a lot of people there that are either trying to slightly upgrade their players from what they see, or they're trying to completely take someone for granted based on things that they think they're going to like more with the big names.
Yeah, I mean, let's just break it down really quickly.
But this is a fairly even trade.
Well, would you trade Rodgers for Allen? You would want Allen on that side of the trade, right?
Maybe. It's a fairly even trade.
Okay, what about Deebo Samuel for Calvin Ridley? Which side of that would you want to be on?
Right now, Deebo Samuel is the far better player.
And in the end, Barkley or Swift would you want to be on?
Again, Swift has more immediate upside, but we've been talking about how DeAndre Swift is in the middle of on the Lions team.
Yeah.
It's rough.
He's the best part of their offense, though.
I agree with your premise to begin with, saying that those 3 players are up and coming as opposed to the other ones that might be bigger names that are performing well right now.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, but I think the difference, if we put it into points, is going to be down to 5 out of 100. I don't think that it's worth doing, but this is the kind of thing that people want to mess things up. They want to toss things up. They want to get guys that have a trajectory that's going up, the player trends that are going up. So don't fall into that trap, right? If you are the team that has players that are doing well and the trending up, don't get rid of them for players that are bigger names, but maybe a splash in the pan for this week.
Okay, so here's another trade that he got offered.
How many trades does Ketchup have over here?
At least 2. So he got offered Nick Chubb, Devonta Smith, I assume, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Clyde. It's like an ATM machine. For Christian McCaffrey. Would you pull the trigger? And I say...
Why would someone trade 3 running backs for a running back? That's insane.
I say absolutely, because Christian McCaffrey is not even playing right now.
I disagree. You don't trade the best player in the game of football, in the game of fantasy football, possibly, for 3 players that forces you to drop 2 players. So look at your team and say, are there 2 players that you can drop, and those values you don't care about? Like, you're going to lose a lot of value in just doing that transaction. There's, like you said before, watch out for what players are doing. You're trading 3 for 1. That means that guy is going to try to get the best player he possibly can, in this case, the best player perhaps in football, for a bunch of players that he can then replace with players that have a little bit of value.
If Christian McCaffrey was playing, I'd be 100% on your side.
He's going to play this week or next week.
He probably will.
He's currently not playing, so I understand what you're saying. But he's not going to be a Joe Mixon this year that doesn't play at all. He was in pads in limited practice yesterday.
And I am
today.
I am almost always on your side. And earlier this week, I was giving trade advice to someone when I said, don't trade multiple players for just one, or don't be on the wrong side of that.
Don't.
But in this case, the guy giving up the multiple players is giving up a lot of good players.
Because you like Chubb.
Yeah, I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire too. I like Devonta Smith. I think that your team is better in the long run, and you're going to pick up more wins right now with those players. Now, Christian McCaffrey may be the player that winds up winning you the championship because he can play further down the line.
That's such a weird
Which
trade.
makes you...
I'm not even sure. Like I need a lot of information about that league. But let's say if you're trading Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Nick Chubb, like, you have to give me what your team looks like and what your running backs are.
He says that he needs running back help.
Well,
so he has McCaffrey, who can't play right now, and he's picking up 2 running backs that would start. Would he even be starting both of them, though, is the question.
Yeah. So I don't like 3 for 1 trades. It's going to ruin the value of your team that you already have because you have to drop people.
Yeah, you're going to lose your... I mean, obviously your bench depth is going to improve.
But somebody trading you Nick Chubb and Clyde Edwards doesn't have their head bolted on straight. So we would have to have more information.
Well, the thing is, if you're the one... Yeah, okay.
That's too much value for a player, isn't it?
No, that's yeah.
But the problem is, if he has another running back that's also going along with Christian McCaffrey, and he can't play all 4 of those guys, then there's no point in making that trade. It doesn't help his team, is what I'm saying. So we need more info. That said, Johnson Diggs. Thanks, Glenn, for that insightful sentence. Perhaps you can phrase that into something that means something.
It's in reference to the line right before him.
Oh, okay.
They want to start 2.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, how do you have that many good players? That's insane.
Yeah, you shouldn't have a problem with winning your league.
Oh, 6-man league. All right, well, we'll catch up. Condiments come in many different flavors.
We should say that 6-man leagues don't need advice.
They come in many different flavors, but when you have a trade that's CEH and Nick Chubb for Christian McCaffrey, then perhaps you don't need our advice. Yes, you should simply roll a coin, not flip, roll, and see what happens, and then just go with that.
Maybe flip a dice.
Flip a dice or roll a coin. That's what I would suggest for you.
Okay. But if you're starting 2 of these players, Diggs, Chase, Ridley, I assume David Johnson, D. Johnson, and Chris Godwin, who are you starting? Well, not David Johnson, especially against the Patriots. Diggs, I'd start Diggs this week. And Chase, I think. Because Ridley, he's playing well, but everyone puts up all the points on the Jets on the ground. So I probably wouldn't, start the passing game in Atlanta if I had to, unless I had to. Chris Godwin is kind of up or down because there's so many targets on that team.
Honestly, I would start Diggs, Wrigley, and...
Oh, Deontay Johnson.
Sorry, Diggs, Ridley, and Oh, no. Diggs, Johnson, and Godwin. I would just start the 3 receivers.
Well, you can only start 2 of them.
Oh, I see.
Then I would start Diggs and Johnson.
I would start Diggs and Johnson or Godwin and Johnson, depending on how you feel about Diggs. I know that
the Chiefs are giving up tons of points. You've got to start Diggs this week.
You have to understand that Stefon Diggs has not been putting up points.
I do. I am fully aware of that.
So at some point you have to realize that and, put it into effect, right?
I'm not worried about that, though.
I see. So
he's had 13, 8, 10, and 10 targets. Last week he had 114 yards. He'll be fine.
Sure. No problem. I think that no matter who you start, you're going to be fine. Is that still in the 6-team league?
Hey, if it's 6 teams, you really need to score a ton of points in order to win.
Joey says, need 2 wide receivers this week. I've got Robert Woods, Tyler Boyd, Marvin Jones, Cortland Sutton, and Laviska Shenault. All right. Tell us if that's PPR, half PPR, or standard, and we will give you a consideration. I would love if that was half PPR.
Because that's what you have up already?
Well, no, because that's what I rank for. So I already know the answer.
Where we start everything.
Yeah. So I love Tyler Boyd. I think Tyler Boyd is great, but T. Higgins might be playing this particular week. I have Tyler Boyd ranked at 22 in half PPR. He's playing half PPR right now. As far as Cortland Sutton, he's ranked 21 for me, right there above Tyler Boyd. And we're looking at some of the other
half for sure.
Some of the other guys that he has on his squad. As far as
where's Shenault on your list?
Woods and Shenault. Shenault is number 41.
Do you see him moving up in your?
I do, but not until it happens. Not until it actually happens. Until he has 100 yards and a touchdown.
No, I'm saying this week. Do you see him moving up in your rankings?
Yes, maybe slightly, but not like to 25 or anything. Okay. Like maybe he'll be 36.
That's fair.
Yeah, but I think he will be moving up. It's not like suddenly DJ Chark is going to come back from the dead. So
this is true.
So looking at Marvin Jones.
So of those two, of Jones and Shenault, who would you rather start?
Marvin Jones and Robert Woods.
No, I meant of the 2 Jacksonville receivers, Jones and Shenault. Who would you rather start?
Who would I start on Jacksonville? Marvin Jones.
Okay.
Well,
I would too. And Tennessee.
It might change a little bit.
The pass.
They might what I'm saying to you is that in my rankings tomorrow, they might end up back to back at 35.
And that's why we ask these questions. We don't ask the questions of the guys who are 15 and 30.
Yeah, but
that's an obvious.
But I don't care about that. The point is, the question is who to start from those guys, and I think the answer is Tyler Boyd. The
Titans are giving up the second most points to opposing wide receivers. I think that it behooves you to figure out which receiver is going to be the better one.
The answer for me is Sutton and Boyd.
Sutton and Boyd. I think I would go with Jones and Boyd because Sutton may have Drew Lock as his quarterback.
Yeah, but even if he does, I mean, it still has a higher upside than the other guys that we're talking about. But
are the Steelers bad against the pass this year?
Not necessarily.
They are 5th most points to opposing wide receivers.
Well, that's because there have been injuries from the defensive backs where Joe Hayden is back now, etc.
I just want to know how they're doing.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's questionable at best. Okay, we got your answer. I say Boyd and Sutton, and Jason says Boyd and Jones. Correct?
Yes.
All right. One more. I traded Kyler Murray.
I don't mind the Sutton start though. Well, I do because of Locke.
I traded Kyler Murray. Well, again, that's going to change a little bit tomorrow for me.
True.
When I actually sit down and look at this stuff. Traded Kyler Murray, Cortland Sutton, Jared Cook for Jalen Hurts, DK Metcalf, and TJ Hawkinson. Did I win? And
I don't know. Did you win this week? I don't know.
You have to tell us. And the answer is, are you doing well in fantasy?
Is your team winning?
Would you like to make the playoffs?
That's what we need to know.
So, Balloons Battles, which I kind of love. I feel like it's an Atari 2600 game title or something.
Maybe he plays the tower defense game that I play, Balloons.
Balloon Battle. Yeah. Well, did you win the trade? And I think the answer is yes. You won the trade based on the players that you have for right now and their value right now.
I concur. I think you won that trade.
So congratulations. Balloons battles. You have won that trade. That's fantastic. We don't have that much time left. However, I would like us to go over something that Jason and I prepared for this particular broadcast. That is, we talked about some sleeper candidates that might be below what you would normally start at the positions of running back and wide receiver, but could have and do have top 10 upside for this coming week.
Okay.
So let's have a little break while we think about
sip on something.
How we're going to discuss that. All right. And happy birthday, Jay.
Thank you.
It's a busy show today.
Yeah. We should do like a late January show and give you a half birthday show.
What is a late January show?
I don't know. We could preview the championship weekend.
No one's going to tune into the late January fantasy.
It's true.
What are you like, fantasy Super Bowl? Is it?
Yeah. Well, the actual Super Bowl would be daily fantasy.
No.
Well, thanks for all those questions. That was excellent. That was a nice rapid fire bunch of questions. Waiting for flowers to bloom, waiting for life to resume someday soon. So when we talk about sleepers, we're talking about guys who are kind of outside of the group that you would by default start and who have upside in the top 10 of their position. So first on my list is James Conner. He's playing the San Francisco 49ers this week. Last week he was the running back 8. The week before he was the running back 12.
Didn't we just talk about James Conner and you had mentioned like he's not really doing anything? Well, this is not happening anymore.
I believe that I have already conceded on Jalen Hurts. You know, if you can't change your mind and embrace the players that are playing well, then you're going to be bad at fantasy.
That's true.
So if you have a take and it's wrong, accept it and move on.
Change it.
Thank you. So either the 49ers are going to have an injury hobbled Jimmy G or Trey Lance in his first NFL start. Either way, Arizona's highest scoring offense is going to be just fine. The Cardinals have scored at least 31 points every week. They could easily find themselves with some garbage time. So Connor's not doing a lot with his carries, but he's getting a decent amount. The carries have been going up a little bit. It seems like he's getting the short yardage work instead of Kyler Murray.
Who do they go to when they need to score a touchdown?
They go to James Conner in the red zone now. They don't give it to Kyler Murray. They want to preserve Kyler Murray because he is a precious flower who is going to win them a Super Bowl someday.
Sure.
He's far above the Andy Dalton line.
That is true.
Wide receiver Kadarius Toney on the Giants goes to Dallas this week.
How about Kadarius?
Last week, the Giants had 2 of their starting wide receivers, Shepard and Slayton, out with injury. That resulted in the Giants having their best passing performance of the season. Daniel Jones threw for over 400 yards. Kadarius Toney led the team in targets. He had 9. He caught 6 of them, 78 yards. The Cowboys are giving up the 3rd most points to opposing running wide receivers through 4 games. Tony's going to get peppered with targets again. The Giants are going to either have to keep pace with the Cowboys offense or they're going to have to try and catch up. Either way, it's a great spot for Tony to break out. If he finds the end zone, he's an easy top 20 guy. If he winds up with 7 or 8 catches and over 100 yards and a touchdown, then he can easily break into the top 10. So I like Kadarius Toney this week. And finally, I've got Zach Moss of the Buffalo Bills. He's a running back. They're going to Kansas City. So Moss was inactive week 1, and after that, he's had a great season. He scored a touchdown in each of the other 3 games. And this week, he goes up against another defense who is giving up tons of fantasy points. The Chiefs are giving up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing running backs this year. Moss is gaining more of a share of the carries in the Buffalo backfield.
Do you remember when he was inactive in the first week?
I do. He was sick, apparently.
He was just sick.
Yeah. So it wasn't like he's no good, we're going to sit him, which is kind of what we thought at first.
People still get the flu.
Yeah. Yeah, don't I know it with the White Sox.
Believe it or not.
So anyways, I think that Moss would be the guy over Singletary. I think Moss can have a big game in Kansas City. I say the touchdown streak continues. Excuse me. The Bills are going to keep rolling. They've put up 40 points at least in every game. Or not 40 in every game, but they're averaging about 40 points a game during this winning streak. I think they put up another 40 against the Chiefs. And I think Zach Moss has a good game.
Okay, and I have a couple as well, and these are up on drinkfive.com. Again, anybody listening, please go visit our YouTube channel. You can find us just by searching Drink5, all one word. We do have a goal this particular season of getting up to a certain amount. We just started the YouTube channel. We would love if you guys would subscribe to the channel. That would be fantastic. We will send you much love, but not things yet. But soon, things.
Yes, but for now, love.
Yes, that's right. So for my particular sleepers, I have Michael Carter. He's at Atlanta this particular week. And as predicted by many in the fantasy football community earlier this year, Michael Carter has begun to take over the Jets' backfield snaps. Now, his competition is Ty Johnson and Tevin Coleman. Not so big. And he had a season-high 13 attempts.
Not insurmountable.
No, definitely not. He had a season-high 13 attempts last week against the Titans, but was only able to put up 9.4 points against the middling rushing defense. That includes his first NFL touchdown.
Oh, that means he only had 34 yards.
True, but again, he had 13 attempts. That's his highest all year, highest of anybody, I believe, as running backs for that squad. Good news ahead for Carter, too, is that the Jets are doing better. He'll be going up against the Falcons in Week 5. The Falcons have been giving up an average of 19.9 points per week to opposing running backs. It's not likely that Carter starts to see more passing down work, just an occasional pass. He's not the passing down back, but the momentum looks good. So coming off the first win of the season, the Jets in overtime, a win that people didn't really expect. Zach Wilson
No, we didn't.
led them to an incredibly good win there. And all their receivers are healthy at one time. I think that should really help Michael Carter and perhaps be the combination of fairy dust necessary for his breakout performance. Maybe against the Falcons. Because if there's anybody to go up against where you do well, maybe the Falcons.
I know on Sunday there was a bunch of people around me who were following the game on their phone, and it was just...
Didn't expect the Jets to win.
It was just, oh my God, I can't believe the Jets are going to win. Yeah.
Laviska Shenault, we mentioned him earlier versus Tennessee. DJ Chark injured on the fourth play of the game. So sad for him against the Bengals. Getting carted off the field. Broken left ankle is what he was eventually diagnosed with. It's not likely that we'll see DJ Chark for the rest of the season. So that does open up the number one wide receiver spot on the Jaguars for the second year receiver, Shenault. Now, Marvin Jones is also there. And it is true that he only has the second most targets in the team so far this season. 28 go to Shenault, and Marvin Jones has 31.
Okay.
But looking at the trajectory of their trending stats, Jones has fewer targets and less fantasy production for each of the past 3 weeks, whereas Shenault has registered an increase in receptions, yardage, and fantasy points over the same period of time. Mm-hmm. And so you know what we like is trends. Player trends are really important, a clear indication of how his usage will trend moving forward, especially with Chark's injury. Trevor Lawrence leaned on Shenault heavily last week. I watched the whole game. It was looking at Shenault all the time as the first or second read. That was clear. And I think that he'll continue to do so against Tennessee, who has, by the way, the league worst passing defense, currently allowing 36.1 fantasy points per game on average.
Jeez.
So Shenault should have no problem racking up enough fantasy points to be startable on your roster. Robbie Anderson's my last guy versus Philadelphia. Historically considered by many to be your classic boomer bust fantasy option, Anderson has already showcased the deep field abilities. I mean, the first week of the season, he had a 57-yard touchdown from Sam Darnold. That's exactly what you expect from Robbie Anderson, right?
Yep.
Now, the issue is more about Anderson's consistency of play and whether or not he can get into that same rhythm with Darnold as he did with Teddy Bridgewater last year with the Panthers. Last year, he had 95 receptions for over 1,000 yards. Now, that seems more consistent. It's not something that we've seen from Robbie Anderson on a year-to-year basis. But this year, it doesn't seem to be trending that way.
Yeah, last year he had 5.9 receptions per game. He's never even reached 4.0 in any year of his career. This year he's only at 2.5. The trouble is that Sam Darnold is just a rushing machine and getting 5 rushing touchdowns in the year so far.
Well, McCaffrey goes out and he has 2 touchdowns.
I know.
He's like, someone's going to rush on this team. It's going to be me.
Yeah.
But with the Philadelphia passing defense on the wrong side of good so far this season, and his targets, Anderson's targets per game trending from 3 to 6 to 11. Now that's if you discount the Houston win, which is 26-9 in Week 3. Now I normally don't do that for team wins that are in a trajectory, but in this particular win, 26-9, I saw the game. It really didn't seem like a game in which passing was required to win.
It wasn't, and it's a game where Houston hung in a little while, but it still never felt close.
So because of that, if you look at his targets going from 3 to 6 to 11, I do like the trend of that. It's clear that Sam Darnold and the coaching staff and the offensive coordinator want to give Robbie Anderson more targets. Now, granted, DJ Moore has solidified his position as the number 1 WR there, but I do think there is room on this offense for Anderson to be a startable fantasy threat, and I think that might happen this particular week. I think that we might see the most fantasy points he's had so far this year this week.
Okay. We have one more question from the chat room, and I just want to have a little bit of fun with this one because it's a little obvious, I suppose. So, Michael Chapp asks us, he just got Hollywood Brown and Zach Moss for Melvin Gordon and Cortland Sutton. And what the subtext here says is, did I rape the Broncos fan good enough? Because, yes, you totally won that trade, and you found yourself a Broncos fan and took advantage of him to the point where we may need to call the police.
Well,
so yes, you won that trade by a long shot.
Well, I don't necessarily.
I'm not sure if you're asking for evaluation or just bragging to us, but well done.
Well, I don't necessarily condone the use of that of those action words.
Well, I've had a few drinks and it's the end of the show.
I do.
So let's cancel me, please.
I do agree with what they mean for that trade. So I agree. I think that you've generally screwed the other player.
Yes.
In some way.
And I don't think it was consensual.
Yeah, and it probably wasn't agreed upon by both parties.
Yeah, I mean, you have to click accept, but you know.
Oh Lord. Okay, so thank you guys so much. Jason, do you think that you could kind of wrap this whole thing up? And question, are you okay with having another little shot or another beer to?
I've got plenty of beer. I'll finish up a beer here before we take off.
Okay, why don't you go over if you have time, the cut list just quickly.
Our J cut list for tonight.
How about I stop you if there's anything in the J cut list that I feel.
So at quarterback, we're cutting Baker Mayfield and Trevor Lawrence and Jameis Winston, and I have no problem with that because we're talking about a 1 quarterback league.
Cut them
and cut them all. At running back, we're going to cut Ronald Jones. We're going to cut A.J. Dillon because even though Aaron Jones not necessarily at 100% health, he's going to get 100% of those damn carries. And Mark Ingram and Tyson Williams. The Mark Ingram one, his carries have been going up, so I'm not sure I would cut him. Hell, I was putting in claims for him this week.
Congratulations. Chase the Houston running game.
But you shouldn't.
I want you to, as someone who's playing me in fantasy football.
Okay, I have to admit that there's a lot going on in fantasy football, and I'm thinking Mark Ingram, Baltimore Ravens. Never mind. Let's cut the guy in Houston.
Yes.
Okay, wide receiver, we're cutting Marquez Callaway, Curtis Samuel, and Will Fuller. Curtis Samuel just came back off the IR. I suppose he could come up and do something, especially with Heineke gone. But especially with Logan Thomas gone.
Yeah.
But it's Heineke throwing him the ball.
Heineke's been doing well, but I mean, look, they have Terry McLaurin, and like that's enough for a quarterback that is not that good.
And at tight end, there's a lot of great streaming options. None of them are Jonnu Smith, Austin Hooper, Robert Tonyan, or Tyler Conklin.
You know the funny thing is everyone wanted Jonnu Smith and not Hunter Henry, and now everyone's trying to get Hunter Henry and not Jonnu Smith.
I don't know why. I mean,
well, he has more receptions and touchdowns than Jonnu Smith does.
So the Patriots are 1-3, but have a positive point differential. They are better than their record, And it's because...
Did you watch the game against the Buccaneers?
I did. That was like the only game I watched last week.
The Patriots were very good.
Yes. Patriots played excellent football.
Arguably, Belichick won that game.
The Patriots were good and had negative rushing yards on the game.
And
that's impressive as hell.
It also means that don't ever draft a New England Patriots running back.
Well, don't ever start a running back against Tampa Bay this year.
And both those things are true.
Yes, they can both be true. They can both be true.
That's amazing.
Okay.
It's amazing. Everything is true.
Yeah, everything is true.
So please, again,
and everything is false.
We would love if you guys would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just look for Drink 5. We are here tonight and every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central Time, hanging out, talking to you guys, and we look forward to it. Drink 5.
Drink 5, everybody. Go White Sox.